Welcome to Penn State Dickinson Law's Profiles in Leadership series. I'm Daryl Lim. I serve as Associate Dean for Research and Strategic Partnerships. This series explores leadership through the eyes of judges, lawyers, policymakers, and institution builders as they reflect on their journeys, professional responsibilities, and the lessons they have learned along the way. It is a real pleasure to welcome today's guest, Michael Scullin. Michael is an international lawyer whose career spans cross-border transactions, arbitration, intellectual property, immigration, diplomacy, and institutional leadership. He studied history at the University of Pennsylvania, earned his law degree at Penn State Dickinson Law, where he served on the law review. He later pursued advanced international legal studies in Salzburg and clerked for Judge Kunzig of the United States Court of Claims. Over the course of his career, he has advised clients across Europe, Asia, and North America. He has served for nearly 17 years as Honorary Consul of France in Philadelphia and Wilmington, and led nonprofit and philanthropic institutions and directed one of the world's largest law firm networks. It's an honor to welcome you to Profiles in Leadership.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. You began your academic journey studying history at Penn, and then later on law at what is now known as Penn State Dickinson Law, and you also served on the law review. Starting at Penn as a student of history, now looking at where we are, what do you think is the most important lesson that we can learn?
Well, I think I started learning lessons a lot before that. When I was a kid, some parents send their kid to summer camp. My parents sent me to live with a family in Mexico by myself when I was 13. When I was in high school, I was studying classics. I was at a Jesuit school, which I might touch on a little bit later. And I had the opportunity when I was 16 to spend a summer in Rome studying archaeology and history. And I think I learned a lot of principles from the Jesuits. A lot of uh, the way I kind of lead my life, some of the mottos are people for and with others, caring for people, the idea of service, promotion of justice, pursuit of knowledge. And one thing that I really love is the expression of arguing so that the truth may appear. That's how I got going. Specifically, what I started learning at Penn in modern European history was what has happened before us and what we can learn from that in applying it to the actual times or the future.
Do you think we are doomed to repeat history?
This is a good time to ask that question, and I don't want to get into politics, but uh, history does, one learns a lot from history, but one sees things repeating themselves or approximating themselves. Things look familiar.
Well, what drew you to history as a focus of your studies?
So I was I in high school I had AP American history, but then when I was in and I also studied Greek and Latin and ancient history, so I was very familiar with um, Greece and Rome, and I liked history, and I think that's what led me to it. I did had a lot of English courses too, so I balanced that out, and I, it turned out to be very interesting and really kind of had a little bit of an effect on my life because modern European history starts with the French Revolution, 1789, which was inspired in many ways by the American Revolution. And the a lot and a lot of my um, work subsequently has been in things related to France. So everything's kind of connected.
So then you finish school And at that point, did you decide that you wanted to go on straight to law school?
No, actually, that's a good question. I decided, on the contrary, that I was going to take a year off before I applied to law school, before I went to law school. And I mentioned I studied modern European history. It would have been a perfect opportunity to take a junior year abroad or a junior semester abroad in France. But frankly, I didn't have my act together enough to get that accomplished. So after college, I had this sort of wanderlust, to use a French word. No, that's not a French word. And I wanted to go back to Europe, and I ended up in France, and especially in Paris, and I just loved it. And I've been doing a lot of things based on that love and affiliation since then.
So then you decided to go to law school, and one of the schools that you applied to and you decided eventually to go to is, of course, the school that now connects us, what was then known as the Dickinson School of Law. How did that happen?
Um, it was the best school that I applied to that I got into, and I was able to stay close to home. I grew up in Philadelphia, so that was nice. It had an excellent reputation in Pennsylvania, especially at the time. Many judges and prosecutors and other legal professionals in Pennsylvania were products of the Dickinson School of Law. So and it was in a nice setting and turned out to be a great experience.
What do you remember from your time at the law school?
I don't know if I can go into all of that, but um, there was a camaraderie, I think. The classes were fairly small. The first, second, and third year classes. Um, there was a lot of access to the professors. I think now, by contrast, there is a lot more exposure to different types of law and international law. We didn't really have a lot of that at the time, and that was in the 80s before a lot of the international movements had gotten, it was before the EU, et cetera. Another thing that I really did like about it also was there was a pretty active LLM, international LLM group, and so that added a very nice flavor, let's say, to the student body and to the experience.
Thanks. So actually, in order to be a student of international comparative law, you had to go the extra mile because if you wanted to do family law or corporate law, it was right there for you. You had to look for opportunities to pursue that. So how did you do that?
So you mentioned I had been practicing for 4 years as a lawyer in Philadelphia, and I really had this. I still had this kind of urge to do something internationally, and I found this program through another law school. The program is based in Salzburg, and a feature of it was not only studying advanced international legal studies, but also a placement in a law firm or other place in the language that spoke the language that I wanted to be learning and working in, a paid internship. And I got assigned to, I probably would have picked Paris if I had my druthers, but I got assigned to a law firm, a very good law firm in Geneva, Francophone, French-speaking law firm. And I won't bore you with the details, but that really it was banking and mergers and acquisitions, international mergers and acquisitions, and that was really a great initial building block, let's say. And then I built on that, and maybe we'll get into some of the other things that I've done, but that was a big start.
So
And
I
also,
hope.
got me. I had high school French, and something we may talk about also is my value of language ability and language study. Um, I'd had high school French, but and I had spent a month living in Paris that the summer after I graduated from law school. But it was really there in Geneva. I had a tutor whom I hired, and I and I really started to speak French and use it, even if some of the documents that we were using in international transactions were in English. Everyone in the office was either Swiss or French, so over coffee or a glass of wine, um, that really changes the interaction and the atmosphere.
So when you are with a group of international folks in Geneva, would you be speaking French, English, or something else?
Yes. Mainly French and English. And then sometimes we would have movies that would be in German, and maybe with French subtitles. But as I said, a lot of the documentation was in English, and that's why they wanted to have an American or an English-speaking law firm there. But apart from that, you speak to everybody in French. Of course, Geneva is a very international city too. I mean, a lot of people speak English there. Um, uh, and getting back to my study of the classics, Geneva, the old city in Geneva, La Vieille Ville, is uh, established on the ancient Roman town of that started Geneva. So that was a kind of a nice aspect for me also.
Yes, it was. And I actually was there just a few months ago. Yeah,
It's a
lovely
beautiful
place.
city, and just has a lot of nice attributes. Very good food.
So th this is actually something which I think Europeans just feel intuitively. They are one of 27 member states. They have got borders all around. Many of them speak different languages, and they've got to be able to transmit and receive in different languages and cultures, and maybe legal cultures as well. Here in the United States, you almost have one culture. Talk to us about how you, as an American law student and lawyer working in Europe, uh, both observed but also adapted to the legal culture that you saw there.
So I think I mentioned I had this kind of international experience from a very young age, and so I was used to being exposed to other cultures. When I went to Mexico, I mentioned I went by myself and switched planes. And, um, uh, I had just studied the Mexican-American War in school, and the Americans won, so that was a great thing. When I got there, and there were 10 kids in the family, I understood that I came to understand there was another way of looking at that that wasn't so great. So that was an initial thing. Then I had, as I said, I had the chance to study in Rome and be really exposed to and traveled all over Rome when I had free time. Again, very young age. Had gone back to had eventually toured around Europe after college and went to spend time in Paris. Um, and then had the experience in studying international law in another country in Salzburg. And so I think I had an openness to other cultures and a willing to learn from them and to see how people have different perspectives and it's a learning process. Things that I've talked about this subject before in other contexts, and um, now over the years, many years, some things that I probably seemed strange to me 20 or 30, 40 years ago, now it's just sort of part of my operating system. I'm so used to dealing with people. I kind of know how they react. And one of my jobs as a lawyer is to interpret back and forth from people from different cultures, whether they be lawyers or clients or I just was on the phone yesterday with a client in Paris, and we were doing something with an estate in New York, and he's the beneficiary. And he wanted to take a certain approach with respect to one of the government offices, and I said, this is this is not going to work in New York. But so then we had to kind of go through that and kind of work on that to see what might work and satisfy what he was trying to do, and what might satisfy the government authorities.
So that's not something that you can pick up a textbook and read. It's not something that we teach in law school. How do you develop that skill?
Hmm. Just by doing it, I think, and also wanting to do it. I've always loved, I learned Spanish and my family says I refused to speak English when I came back. I don't know if that's true or not, but I was at an age where I could absorb it kind of, and I think since then, I just understand the value of being exposed to different cultures and trying to see how the other side looks at things, and I enjoy it. So, I think that's something that helps a lot too.
So you then decide that you wanted to become a law clerk. What was that process like?
Uh, well, I applied for the position at the United States Court of Custom and Patent Appeals, United States Court of Claims, and I got the position. But my judge, as I mentioned to you earlier, uh, died before the term started. So I had to, I would have been in DC. My life would have been a totally different trajectory, maybe. But I pivoted, to use an overused word, and eventually found my way in what I ended up really enjoying doing.
Thanks. So you really were Mr. International before globalization became a buzzword. How important do you think that is today, more so, less so, in a different way? Uh, you are now the mentor talking to budding lawyers interested in following your footsteps. What would you say to them?
It's really interesting. It's an interesting time because I think in the United States I should say, things are much more international than they used to be, obviously. And when I started my experience in other countries, people didn't fly by plane that much, travel by plane. It was a regulated industry. It was not the thing the usual people did on a regular basis like they do now. We didn't have this interconnected global supply chain, for better or worse. Uh, we didn't have uh, the European Union. We didn't have a lot of these international organizations. So things have changed a lot. In another sense, things here seem to be going in another direction, and sometimes that happens over history. And I've studied history in a lot of different contexts, and getting old enough, you can actually see history happening, which is an interesting experience. So uh, I forget exactly what your question was, but things are a lot different now, and I'm not sure what direction they're going to be going in. Is the NATO going to continue to exist? Are aggressive countries going to be able to just do whatever they want? And that has an effect. I'm not a politician per se, but working in a context that's affected by politics and the economy and the interaction between the two, it's something I'm aware of.
And if you're an American law student and wanted to work for some time at a non-American firm somewhere else, do you start at a US branch of a big law firm and you hope for a transfer? Do you apply straight to law firms overseas? What would you advise folks to think about today?
So, I can only advise on my own experience, really. I'm not an expert on, you know, career development or how law firms work necessarily, or all law firms work. But I think the important thing is to do what you can and do what you want, and build on your experience. So one way to do that is, through an international firm that has an office in New York. Sometimes those positions aren't, the positions are limited in the number and types of people that they'll hire, regardless of their intelligence, or, it may have been they only hire from certain schools, or and if you're not from one of those schools, you're not going to be hired. I think that's less true now than it was when I was a young lawyer, but it's still in certain ways applicable. Um, if that is one way, if you are in an area that would uh, be an area where you could work abroad also, and you showed your qualifications to do that, that would be possible. And I've known people who've done that. Also in the other direction. I think based on my experience, you just kind of I've had opportunities that came to me, and I took them, and I didn't go on a really traditional path, I would say, but I ended up doing what I like, and that's really a key, I think. And I think students have to kind of build whatever they can build, not students, but graduates, um, and try to get to where they want to go.
Well, you've basically been trailblazing all over the world since
I don't know that.
Mexico. I don't think you've stopped that. But one of the things that was really remarkable and stood out to me when I first met you is your connection with the French government through your position as honorary consul. So first of all, tell us what that means to be honorary consul and how did it happen?
So the honorary consul is the official representative of the country in the region. The difference between an honorary consul and a consul general, who a lot of people have heard of, is that the consuls general are career diplomats normally. Um, they come up through the foreign ministry, and eventually they get appointed to be the consul or consul general. Uh, Honorary consuls are not career diplomats, and they're really chosen for that reason, because usually they have a base in the region that they are going to be serving. And I could go on the subject of the duties and activities of consuls and honorary consuls, but I was appointed by the French Foreign Ministry. My credentials were accepted by the State Department as a foreign diplomat. Um, I used to go through I stepped down from this position in 2022, but I used to go through the diplomatic line when I'd come into the airport here. Um, and Many honorary consuls are from the country they represent. Either were born there or they have that heritage. Um, my case, I was born in the United States. I learned later, after I was appointed, that my great-grandmother was born in Alsace in France in 1850. It's a section that's gone back and forth, has been contended for by different countries, but it was part of France when she was born. So I actually do have French blood. But at the time, I didn't know that. So a lot of people are natives of the country that they represent, but they don't have to be. And eventually, one of the nice things for me that came about along the way is I was conferred with French nationality, French citizenship. So I was also a citizen of the European Union, and I like to think of myself as a kind of a global person, and that really helps me to prove that.
Well, one of the things I mentioned to you when we first met, you told me about your connection with Alsace is it's widely regarded as having the best food in France because of all the different influences. Do you agree?
Attention, professeur. Um, There are many regions in France. I would be in great difficulty if I answered that question the way you're suggesting. Um, I happen to love that food. You know, it's delicious, and it is a mix of different cuisines, mainly German and French. Uh, I have another connection with Lyon, as you know, the second or third largest city in France. I established, maybe we'll talk about that later, an exchange program between our bar association and the Bar of Lyon. Lyon is regarded as a diplomatic, culinary capital of France. Also, many French famous French chefs are from there. People in Philadelphia will recognize the name of Georges Perrier, who is a very famous restaurateur here, was from Lyon. Some current chefs are from Lyon here. Paul Bocuse was one of the most famous chefs in the last century, probably. Late Paul Bocuse was from Lyon. So they have a very well developed what I call haute cuisine. And of course, there are many regions in France that have delicious food and wine. One of the anomalies, not anomalies, but a fact about the cuisine in Lyon is that while there are these amazing French, what you would think of as a French restaurant, there's also a type of restaurant called a bouchon, which means many things, but probably in this context, it means the cork in a bottle. Um, but they basically serve only offal. So tripe and sausages and things like that, and they're extremely popular in Lyon and in generally, but not something that most Americans eat a lot of.
So if you choose between French wine and Californian wine, which would you pick?
Well, there again, I'm a little bit prejudiced. Yeah, I'm a commander in the Commanderie de Bordeaux, and also a commander in the Commanderie de Côtes-du-Rhône, two French wine societies. So if I spoke ill about or not positively about either of those regions, I'd be in big trouble. But seriously, I think wines are great all over the world. Increasingly, and the more I travel around places that maybe historically didn't have the greatest wines. I'm finding that they're amazingly good wine producers. Um, you may have heard of the Judgment of Paris, which was a blind competition between French uh, Cabernet, basically Sauvignon, and American and French Bordeaux, I believe it was. And the Americans won. This was 20 or 30 years ago, I think. Everybody was shocked. But the American wine, we had a little bit of a hiccup in the 20s, 1920s, but the wine culture there has California and Oregon and Washington have really developed well. But one of the things that we like going to France is that wine is really part of the culture, maybe less so now than than it was. But in many ways, it's just such a pleasure to be in a place where almost everywhere they're growing things and they're growing grapes, and there's a whole economy that's around that and just learning the tastes and developing your senses. It's something that's been very rewarding.
And do you have a favorite type of wine? Never mind about region, but type.
Um, No, I don't think so. I used to drink more red wine than I do now. There are so many just delicious wines. you could pick any region. You know, my wife and I do a lot of bicycle tours in France and Europe, and we did one in the Loire Valley. Those wines, it's a major wine producing area, but those wines aren't known so much in. I have to be careful going off of this drift because I could be talking about this all day. Um, the Not as well known in the States as they are in other places, but and it's just so happened to make a long story short that the leader of the bike tour was also a wine connoisseur. So, and this particular tour featured dinners with every evening. So he would pick a different cepage, a different grape type, and depending on what we were eating that night, and explain and had wine tastings, and that was an area that I wasn't that familiar with, but have delicious not only white wines but red wines.
I'm going to ask you in a minute about the connection between dispute resolution and diplomacy. But before that, tell us about the connection that you were alluding to with Lyon and the Bar Association.
So many years ago, I won't date myself by saying the year, but decades, let's say, I helped establish a relationship between the Philadelphia Bar Association and the Bar of Lyon, Le Barreau de Lyon. And at the basic level, it's an exchange program for young lawyers or law students. At the time when they came over, the French professionals came over, they were already lawyers, but they had to do like an apprenticeship. Now they're still part of the legal process, and we can legal education process, and we could talk about that later if there's time. Um, but and they come here for law interns. They're about a year away from being a lawyer when they come here. This is easy way to sort of make it understood. They come and spend 6 months, mostly in law firms, but they have worked in judicial chambers and companies, and it's an amazing experience. I was I was in favor of developing this because I had had my own internship experience it was so positive and had such a great change or altered the direction that I went into, and so. And then we also send fewer, but now increasingly more American law students during law school, usually rising second year students, just for a short internship during the summer. And then, of course, they have to have a certain degree of French, just a level of French, some level, so that they can fully appreciate the experience. And I can assure you that it's another thing I could talk about for a long time. It's a great experience for many, many. We've had at least over 100, maybe 150 interns who have participated in this program. And so that's at the basic level, but also on a higher level, there have been exchanges from the leadership of the Bar Association. So in Philadelphia, the president's called the chancellor, and the bâtonnier in the French bar, the person who carries the bâton, the stick, and also exchanges at the gubernatorial level. We've had several delegations of the equivalent of the governor of the region, the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, visiting here. I went on a mission with one of the former Pennsylvania governors to Lyon, the Rhône-Alpes region, and the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, actually has partially. I like to say it's partially because of what I built at the Bar Association level. But Pennsylvania eventually developed a relationship with this Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. For Americans, Auvergne may mean something because it's the birthplace of Lafayette. It was played an important role in the American Revolution. Um, but um, and there's a lot of work on economic development, promotion of trade and international investment between Pennsylvania and that region. And in fact, Pennsylvania has a very well-developed system of representatives in different countries who promote trade and investment. And uh, we have one based in Lyon who covers Francophone Europe. A lot has grown out of that relationship, and it's it's existing literally almost 30 years. So it's we have an intern here in Philadelphia right now, just one, but sometimes we have three or four, and it's been a great program.
Thanks. So, going back to the question that I put to you earlier about what what the law can learn from diplomacy and maybe the other way around as well.
Um, well, I think they're kind of connected. I think a good lawyer knows how to negotiate, uh, and the best lawyers can be very diplomatic, I think. Of course, there are lawyers who are just aggressive and just want to get to where they're going without considering the effect on everybody else. Um, Diplomacy is fundamentally based in law also. Everything about an embassy representation of a foreign country in a country is all based on um, uh, relationships that are fundamentally legal. Um, and a good example of real crossover is, in my work, I do international transactions and international estates. Um, there are treaties between the United States and lots of countries, including France, for treatment of income tax, estate tax. So there you have something that's negotiated diplomatically, but it's a legal document that forms the basis of the structure of the legal relationship between the two countries. So, and I think they're just and uh, I'm not sure where you're going with the question, but another example that I found, I think it's you don't have to be a lawyer to be an honorary consul, and most consuls general are not lawyers, although they do have a lot of quasi-legal training. But there's a lot of overlap in what a consul does and legal aspects of things. So, um, in fact, the French consulate um, performs the function, or did historically, it's less so now, of the notaires in France, the legal professionals who handle real estate tax and estates, and they also have a stamping function like a notary here would, but it's a completely different thing. In my situation, I was responsible for people who died here, and I'd be responsible for arranging for with the family, to ship the body or the ashes back to France. All the administrative things that go with that. I have had people who were arrested, and there's another cultural exchange. To see a French person who's never been exposed to the American legal system or penitential system. It's interesting and sad sometimes, but I've had people who were castaways. Their sailboats capsized in the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know if I mentioned this to you when we were talking before, but um, I had a solo sailor, middle-aged guy who was sailing across the Atlantic Ocean and capsized off the coast of France and toward England. And um, when he arrived in, he was picked up, saved by a ship that diverted from its path and went to get him. And then that ship was headed eventually to Philadelphia. And uh, when he arrived here, he didn't have a passport or his pants or a pot to, you know, to pee in. He and so I needed to arrange for him to be able to enter the United States. So I created a dossier and put all the papers together, and then actually boarded the ship at the shipyard and met with the Customs and Border Protection officers. And so anyway, there's a lot of overlap in the diplomatic realm between law and diplomacy.
And it sounds almost like a full-time job. But really, you were doing many other things in those 17 years in addition to that.
It turned out to be, different. It's another subject for another day, but there are 65 or 70 countries who are represented in the Philadelphia region. Some are career diplomats, most are honorary consuls. There's a tremendous variety in what they're called upon to do, if anything. There's a great variety, a great difference between the sizes of the populations. Um, oh, I should say that I'm of course talking for myself. I'm not talking on behalf of my law firm or the French government or anything like that. And I've retired as the consul, so I wouldn't really have any ability to do that. But yeah, so it did for France. There's a lot that the honorary consul is called upon to do, and if you become a citizen, which I did, there are even more things that you're allowed to do. For example, just one example is there's during the elections, people here can vote not only for the president, but they also have representative senators and members of the Assemblée, deputies they call them, um, who represent expats. And so a polling place is set up here. And if you are a French citizen, you can you can serve as the president of the polling place, the bureau de vote. Um, yeah, there was a lot of work to it. During COVID, because of the travel ban, I have interns usually a lot around the year with this Lyon program and interns who come from other places. And a lot of times they would help me with the administrative aspects of things. And also interacting with the public and answering questions and that kind of thing. But during the travel ban, there were no French interns here. So I was called upon to do a lot more, which is very rewarding, but also does you know cuts into the time that you're practicing law. But it all worked out really well, and it was a great experience. And in my practice, I think being a consul and being a lawyer were gemütlich. Um, they worked well together.
Well, you made it work. And that really is a remarkable skill to have two things like that work so well together. I'm going to ask you about the other remarkable things you've done in your career in other organizations. But before we turn to that, just quickly, people are all thinking about international law these days, and what they see is that international law seems to have no teeth because you essentially it's a obligation that sovereigns put upon themselves, and when it suits them, it seems that they follow those obligations, but it doesn't suit them, they don't follow these obligations. As somebody that's spent a lifetime in international law, what are your reflections on where things stand today?
Wow, such a big and important topic. I'm not an expert on war or national aggression or that kind of thing. Uh, and I don't want to get myself in trouble for speaking out of turn, but I think we're in a time right now where that is a huge issue. And some countries that really promoted the rule of law and helped to have a stable system for, 60, 70, 80 years are no longer on board with that. And I think some of the actions that they take, um, let's say, undercut their positions on actions that other countries are taking without naming any names. And and sometimes without even trying to justify the action. And I think it's a very dangerous place to be in. And for the United States, um, uh, I was just in touch with one of my former members of my law firm consortium in one of the Scandinavian countries that will remain nameless. And I send out an email notification to, not a notification, greetings for when the new year begins. And he wrote back in a very solemn way saying, essentially, I still have friends in the United States, but something's gone wrong and uh, we're in a bad situation. And so that's just one anecdotal reaction, but um, I, this is a subject that experts are going to be writing on for decades. So I can't encapsulate it all here, but it's a question. It's a great question. And it has a lot of impact on where we are now.
Thanks. So, in addition to practicing law, you led nonprofit organizations. You served as a CEO of foundations supporting cancer research and development. You directed one of the world's largest law firm networks. How did your leadership style evolve across these very different settings? So, is leadership something that's transposable, in other words?
Um, I think I think people and certainly myself, you're your own person, so you're going to bring whatever it is in your style to whatever uh, position you're in or whatever you're doing. Um, but you also need to learn the context, and I think as a general rule, you kind of uh, set the vision and the objectives, and you find a way to accomplish them. But you also, as harkens back to something I was talking about at the beginning, um, you have to care about other people, and you have to uh, take in their feedback and their perspectives. And uh, sorry, um, so I think, uh, it comes back also to diplomacy and negotiation, I think, a little bit in what you're trying to accomplish. Um, but it's been interesting I don't think of myself as a leader, but I guess I have led two nonprofit organizations. I was the president of the Consular Corps Association of Philadelphia. I was the chair of the International Law Committee of the Bar Association, and some other things. And in all those situations, you have to understand the context, have an idea of what you want to do, but take into consideration other people's perspectives.
So, right now at your stage of your career, does leadership look different from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago?
Um, I'm not really sure. I think there are probably more tools available for leaders to learn how to manage, and uh, I think leaders can get into trouble, um, whether it's well, any number of things that can happen. Um, and I think people are. I'm not a leader of a corporation, haven't been, but I think you have to be very careful in dealing with the environment, not only uh, the climactic environment, but the environment that you're in which you're operating, and challenges that just thinking about it now that never existed before. Being a president of a university or um, head of a law firm or whatever, coming under political, excuse me, pressure is something that's, I think, different from what's happened before in my lifetime, anyway.
Thanks. I'm going to ask you one final question and then invite you to just close us off with some final thoughts that you might have on any of the topics or any new topics that you want to touch on. So imagine for a moment that you're speaking to your younger self, steps off the plane. Geneva is and the beginning of your professional life is right in front of you. What advice, now looking back at your career, would you have given that young man as he was starting his first day in Geneva?
I think I maybe alluded to it before, but I think you can build your own, call it a career, call it your interests. And I think if you follow doing things that are interesting to you and motivate you and you're kind of passionate about, things will fall into place. And something I mention not infrequently is we didn't talk about this, but I did commercial litigation. I was a commercial litigator for 15 years in the beginning of my career, which was something that, let's say, I'm more suited to being a diplomat than I am a litigator. Um, but through that, I continually pursued interests and things eventually fell into place, becoming the executive director of the global law firm consortium, just something that I was a partner in my law firm by that point. And that opportunity came along, and it was just something that was perfect for me. And it turned out to be a great experience. And also, it was something I could use to build on my international experience. And when I came back to my law firm after that, I actually changed the focus of what I was doing professionally. So, um, uh, sometimes I say you have to wait a while for things to happen, but I don't know that that's great advice for somebody who's in the beginning of their career now. Um, but I do think you can build something on what interests you.
Thank you. Any final thoughts for our viewers?
How much time do we have? Um, No, I mean, I think as I kind of mentioned before, I have come to a point in my career where I really enjoy what I'm doing, which and as I look back, I kind of came in a straight line, but it was really a zigzag going forward. Um, and I think that's something to remember. And I've just had so many great experiences, and I think that's another thing about life. Kind of, if you're welcome to new experiences, it can be great, and you never know where it's going to go. I had no idea that I would ever be a diplomat or a foreign citizen, or um, but here we are, and it's been really great. And meeting people like you, has been a wonderful experience too.
Thanks for those kind words, and thank you for such a thoughtful and generous conversation. We are so deeply grateful for the time that you took to speak to us, your example, and your long-standing partnership with Penn State Dickinson Law. Thank you
Oh,
for
you're a
joining us
gentleman.
on this episode of Profiles in Leadership.
Thank you very much.